minding your body this morning. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you very much. That's minding your balance, Jamie.
Oh, sorry. Welcome, everybody. So happy you're all here. My name is Jamie Zimron, and I'm a board member of Aiki Extensions. And we are excited this morning here, depends when you're watching this by recording, but right now, to be conducting an Aiki Extensions Aiki authors interview, which is part of a series that we're doing to get the information that Aikido senseis, Aikido practitioners are sharing with the world based on the universal principles and practices of Aikido and extending them into the world, which is what Aiki Extensions does. So I'm really happy to welcome my longtime and good friend and colleague, Susan Chandler Sensei, to speak about her book, Minding Your Balance. Her book, which I want to just show you all right off the bat here. There's this beautiful book, and it's beautifully illustrated, you should all know. So, and welcome to all of you who are on the Zoom today and some of your students. I wanted to start with a brief bio of Susan. She's a 6th Dan, 6th degree black belt, and the Dojo Cho chief instructor of Denver Ki Aikido. And she's I visited her dojo, lively, wonderful place from kids to seniors. We've had really good times on the mat there. She's been teaching there for so long. It's really wonderful. I know Susan loves to sing in choirs, and she has an awesome rescue dog, Rusty, who I've met. So in the early 2000s, Susan returned to academia to take a really deep dive, sort of study, investigative dive into what's really the growing field of neuroscience research and all the interconnections between mind, body, and movement, all relative to balance, which is really her passion and specialty. So she's really been combining scientific insights with the practices from Aikido, other somatic martial arts, somatic practices to help people with their balance on really every level, balance and coordination, physically, mentally, emotionally. And she created a radio show, Mind and Body in Motion. She's presented a TEDx talk following the vestibular trail. So this morning we're going to talk with her and follow that trail to gain more information. And you know, she's really made things very practical. And as I said, her book is wonderfully illustrated with just exercise, practice after practice to help people improve their balance. And again, on every level of their physical being and actually into personality, I would say, and for daily life. So Susan, welcome, Susan Sensei.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wonder if you could maybe just start with talking about how balance became your passion and even what balance is.
Well, I think, how much time do we have? So in Ki Aikido, in the style of Aikido that I practice, balance testing is something that's constantly a part of the practice. Actually, the very first thing I ever learned from a mutual friend of Jamie and I, and tell my brother, Jamie is a friend of Ramus. She went to school in Stanford. That the very first thing I was shown was how to put my attention at my center, and my balance was tested, which immediately made me curious about, well, what's going on? But that aspect of training in Ki Aikido is there pretty much in every single class. And I see another friend from Denver, Lee, that when you're younger and training in Aikido, that centering is about finding, well, it's biofeedback, the balance testing of centering. So how do I know if I've dropped into this place in myself or have that clarity, that wholeness, that whole body coordination where my mind is clear, my emotions are calm? I'm thinking about it right now as I'm trying to remember everything I'd like to say and say it clearly. But I was always curious as to what balance has to do with that, because what we see in the practice is that everything changes. Watching, it's particularly powerful, I think, in watching students, because people will be struggling physically with an art. and then they stop and they center, or they feel weight underside, ground themselves. And it's not an incremental change. There's their clarity of perception, their ability to draw on skills that they already have, their ability to adapt in the moment. So you see it in physical coordination, but just across the range of behavior. And like Jamie and others, took all of that into the business world as well. And so how it affects people's ability to communicate and think clearly under pressure and deal with conflict. So I always wondered, what's going on? And when I went back to school, the question that I went with came from kind of an intuitive sense of things, but it was, if I looked at research, or looked for research that had to do with balance and emotion and balance and cognition, that I might find an intersection that helped explain what we experience in Aikido. So that's what got me off the ground. And as a part of that, vestibular, which is one of my favorite words, and people look at me and think I'm crazy, but the inner ear motion, sense of motion, is a central part of how we balance. And so that when I got into the science, I ended up following the vestibular trail through the brain, looking for research that helped understand the interconnection of it all.
It's actually interesting to me when we talk about centering and thinking about the head, right? The alignment of head, head, heart, center, lower belly, but the whole center column, and being sure that our kind of head is on straight, shall we say. And how does that relate with the vestibular? I haven't really thought about that with what's going on in our inner ear in terms of, being balanced or not, where so many people are forward or a little, we get twisted in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, well, we move around all of the time, it's so our alignment with gravity is constantly changing. It's not like when you build a house and you have a plumb line and you get balance and that's it. In human beings, balance is this dynamic, ongoing, constant, really problem-solving process to keep ourselves stable as we move. And so our perception, so I look a lot at the perception side of things, not simply physical alignment, but the perceptual side of things that lets us still stay balanced, even if we lean to the side or we flip in the air and we come back and land on our feet. And so the inner ear motion sensors that actually in evolution, when you look at when did human beings first stand and walk, one of the markers of that is a change in the inner ear motion sensors, the size and shape of the semicircular canals. That information about motion gets put together with information from our muscles and joints, proprioception, and then also with vision, and touch can contribute, and so can hearing, to create, I think about it as more of a gravitational GPS. That is our sense of balance. And so, say, for example, if somebody has vertigo, you can't balance because you don't know where your body is as you're in motion in space. So it's coming to it from the perceptual side, which has to be there for the physical side for us to know what that is and where that is. And there are some people can have strokes or brain injuries where they're leaning and they don't know that they are because that perceptual side is impacted. Yeah, I'm working on a talk I'm giving next week, and I have a video of my brother's first grandchild. And it's fascinating to watch just a toddler when we first learned how to walk. And so much it's about perception. It's about feeling, perceiving where we are in relationship to gravity.
So little kids, when they're, babies, toddlers learning to walk, right? They fall and they get up, and they fall and all until they are up, and find their balance. I remember when I was 3, my dad taught me to ride a bicycle, and I had training wheels on, and he actually took them off. I got the coordination somehow, or I don't know how I did it, but you know, he actually took them off pretty soon, finding balance. Yeah. Can you talk about the relationship of falling, fear of falling? As we were talking in preparation for this, you were saying that most people address balance as a question of falling. You know, how do you avoid falling? And you were saying that it's that and so much more. Balance is around preventing falls, and it's so much more. So maybe you could talk some about that.
Yeah, well, you know, when the skill of balance is how do you prevent falls is you don't lose balance. You know, that is take it from the active side of it.
Mhm.
And that when and again, I've been spending a lot of time watching my great niece, the video of her. She's older now, but along with the physical side of it and all of that sensory stuff that has to come into it, there's the intensity of her awareness, of her presence, of her focus in the moment. And that's a critical part of figuring out that not intellectually, but the whole living being able to have the clarity of sensory information for this complex problem solving to go on in the nervous system and brain. And so we get to a point where just walking around in the world, we can do that. It's second nature. It's in the background. We take it for granted. But when you do something like learn how to ride a bike or go ice skating, or when you learn how to roll an Aikido and you're upside down, you have to find your feet. We're challenging balance, which human beings seem to like to do because we do all those activities. And it automatically wakes up that kind of presence, that awareness in the process of movement. And so this is where we get into the whole thing of mind and body. I mean, balance is sensory motor, so it's perceptual as much as it is movement. But we need a clarity of information to enhance that process. And so what you see when a child is first learning to walk is the full intensity of their awareness. Another place you see that really vividly is like in the Olympics, somebody on the balance beam. So that's an example of challenging balance. It's keeping in mind that our ability to balance is this miraculous thing. It's complex, it's multifaceted, it's dynamic, ongoing, and it's a problem-solving system. It's built to be able to respond and adapt to challenge and change. And so, for example, as we get older and we fall for no reason, right? It's like studies have shown that for older adults, lots of times falls happen when somebody's just standing up, just standing, turning around, walking. And so the question is, why does that happen? Why do we lose that automatic ability? And it's because things happening in our body are now creating the kinds of challenges that putting on roller skates did when we were kids. And so you're gonna ask if you have a question.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, so in this flow, you're kind of suggesting to me it's sort of like breathing. Like breathing just goes on automatically, and yet we can also consciously control our breathing, and it makes a huge difference to our state in so many different ways, to our whole nervous system. So it's kind of like balance. We just do it. It's automatic. We take it for granted, and yet. And your work is very much about bringing our conscious awareness to balance.
Yeah, and it's with something like breathing that we can calm our breathing by an image we hold in mind. So you can think I'm going to control my breathing by intentionally doing something muscular, but you can calm your breathing by putting your attention at your center. You can calm it by tensing and then relaxing your shoulders. And the amazing thing about it, and Lee, I hope you don't mind my mentioning Marilyn, but I worked with Lee's wife, who's a good friend of mine, as she was dealing with incurable brain disease. And even as she was losing her ability to move, that the kinds of things when she could bring that mindful awareness, come to her center, feel her weight drop, that she gained agency and control and could do so much more. So it's so powerful to realize how much our awareness and attention can change all of what's going on neurologically, affecting our awareness and that communication that happens in our nervous system, to help us do what we think of as automatic things, but our ability to interface with that through our awareness. And one of the things that comes to mind in Ki Aikido, they use the image of the what am I going to say? Iceberg. So there's the iceberg, and there's what you see of the iceberg, and then there's everything else that's beneath it. And that what we're doing in the mind-body training, that where we can take control is in that conscious part of it. But that can affect everything that's going on underneath.
Could you talk more about your mind-body training and your balance training? Because like, again, in this book, it's got so many illustrations and exercises. I mean, it's just page after page. There's so much you can do. They're simple in a certain sense, very doable. A lot of the exercises are things you can do yourself. At the same time, you can work with a partner. And maybe you could talk more about, like, what does it mean to sort of test your balance? How do you do that? And how does that help a person to become more present in their body, have their balance become more stable? So maybe you could talk about really what you do in the training and how accessible it is to people.
Yeah. You get me, like, ask me a question about the brain science, and
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Keep going, and yeah.
Yeah, and that's the complexity behind it is so great and is fascinating to me, but that at the level of practice that we can access that in pretty simple ways. And so so much of that's what comes out of the mind-body training. And the full name of Ki Aikido is Shin Shin Tuitsu, and the Japanese characters, the first two Shin and Shin, are different. One means heart or mind or spirit, the second is body. And then Tuitsu means to thread together as one. And I think, well, how I think of it is that the martial arts across history watched human behavior and through trial and error recognized things and then created some of these activities and systems that come forward to us. So the thing of learning how to center is a very simple one, and that's in the book. And so it's like we're hacking the system. We just simply put our attention, our awareness at our center of balance. And I think probably because it is literally a balance point in the body. Also, and I'm always looking at it more scientifically. But in terms of a practice, you can just do that and then walk and you're more stable. Other kinds of things we tend to, like if I'm going to pick something up here to show you the book, maybe I lift up my shoulders. So in Ki Aikido, we talk about it as weight underside. And to discover that, all you have to do is tense up and hold tension. You could do that right now. And then you can release and relax that. And all at once, you're releasing tension that gets in the way of good movement control. Your posture lifts up, but you're bringing mindful awareness into your body. And that's what you see in a toddler, is that mindful awareness. So people can really quickly learn some of these techniques. And then in the classes, we'll practice them. I make people do things like, I swing bats at people, right? We go through obstacle courses, but the pushing on somebody. So right now, as most of us are in a space by ourselves, I can think about my center. Well, did anything change or not? But if I have a partner who tests my stability, then that's biofeedback. Then I have some information about that. And then when you're working with a partner and you're walking, so one of the things is you can walk and have your attention on your feet and somebody tests. And then you try it, put your attention at your center and imagine moving from your center and somebody tests. And
Test
so
means a push, yes?
it means a push, yeah. So I have my, I'm just pushing on something, you know. And doing it in a way that is where I'm really working at not bringing somebody's attention to the test. So if I'm feeling that weight underside, relaxed posture, and somebody pushes on me, and my attention goes to that, then that changes things. So there is a skill in how we push on each other. But in the classes, and it's as powerful to be the person who's testing as the one who's being pushed on. Because if I just centered and they push on me, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. But then we trade places and they do it and I push on them and I see the difference in their stability. Then it's like, oh, something's really happening here. Because when you asked, how does that affect things like fear of falling? There are immediate links between our emotional state and our balance. So it isn't just that I'm afraid of falling and so I'm fearful, or that when we're fearful, our balance is less stable, and they're direct interconnections. And so this centering or feeling your weight drop, they change your balance stability, but they also change your emotional state. And so it kind of affects two things at once. But it gives people more confidence too. I have a student who's been training this summer who has Parkinson's disease. And we were working on focus too. So what we'll say in Aikido, ki is extended. So I'm looking and paying attention to where I'm going. And he's found that walking now, he feels more stable and much more confident. He's less fearful.
You're kind of making me think about dear friend, blessed memory, Kathy Park Sensei. She used to talk about the wobble test and sort of the wobble factor or stability factor, and that and so increasing balance with the test and where your attention is and getting more into your center, legs, feet, ground, those sorts of things, that you get less wobbly and physically, but also you really take it into our mindset, mental state, emotional states. We've taken it, I certainly, and I know Chris probably does, to working with leaders, even business leaders. When you're wobbly compared to when you have that inner stability. Maybe you could talk about that more, the inner connections, kind of with our physical and our personality and our emotional states. So the balance isn't only this physical thing.
Right. If you come into it from kind of a different perspective, because we start and we think about these things as separate things. But rather than saying how do these things fit together, is to say that we really start with a whole living person, and that these are interwoven threads in that. There's one of the neuroscientists, someone who's considered the founding father of modern neuroscience, Sir Charles Scott Sherrington. He said that the reason we have a nervous system and a brain is to move. And he tells a story about a sea urchin, a little sea creature that swims around until adolescence, and then it plants itself on a rock where it will stay for the rest of its life. And the first thing it does is consume its brain and nervous system because it doesn't need it anymore. He's a what is that? But it isn't just to move muscles and joints. It's to take action for survival. It's to take action for meaning. It's to take action for well-being. And so as I'm sitting here and moving my lips, and you can't see me waving my hands around. I am though. If I'm going to reach for a drink of water, it's not just a physical movement. There's something behind that that's about a need, an intention, and a desire. And all of that has to be immediately interconnected to our ability to act in the world. So if you start from that perspective, um, and then look more at behavior as involving all of that, that if I'm worried or fearful, it's not just a mindset or a feeling, it's a state of being around responding in life. Um, so so we start with it all implicitly interconnected. Um, and the other thing that Sherrington said is that he talks about the nervous system. So often we talk about mind and brain, it's like that's here, and then there's the body. But the nervous system extends through the whole of us, and the brain is a part of that system. And he calls all of that an organ of coordination. That's what it does, is bring like all of my fingers and hands and what I'm thinking about and experience. How do we integrate all of that? And that comes back to that Shinshin Tuitsu, that threading together as one. So that starting from there, it just makes sense that if somebody's way of carrying themselves is one of confidence, that we talk about the language, they're grounded, standing tall, that it's inclusive of all of that, rather than trying to take these different pieces and putting them together. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it was beautiful. I mean, I'm so glad we have this recorded. I'm already like taking notes, organ of coordination. I mean, to think, my whole self and is this entire organ of coordination to live, basically, as you said,
Right, yeah.
so that we can live in a holistic or Aiki way, which is about harmonious within ourselves, with our environment, with others, that we can't separate from a holistic, to say a holistic perspective is ridiculous. We are holistic, or, that oneness. So yeah, this is great
and
stuff.
and even if what that oneness is fear and anxiety, then it's all of those threads together about how do I respond in the world, for my survival and well-being.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to just open it up right now I have more questions to ask and can listen to you all day, really, for hours. But does anybody have a question or something that you'd like to ask Quentin?
Susan, you've talked a lot about physical balance, being aligned, and you only have to walk down a high street to see how badly people do that. And it explains why people fall such a lot in old age. But you've not talked about emotional balance. And you can see someone who's really well aligned physically, but if they're het up for whatever reason or they're worried, they're still easy to knock over when you're doing that test. So has any of your work covered how the emotional system impacts on what the body's doing?
Well, I think that's the emotional system and the body, I don't think about as two different things. That's that interconnected set of processes, that emotion, that again, we tend to separate it out, but that emotion is about on the one hand, an emotion is about an evaluation. Is something dangerous? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Emotion is a response to that. And so it's immediately ties into cognition and movement. And so that's where if we work with something like balance just from the physical perspective, where is my body aligned, that we can do that. We can put ourselves there. But that's very different than to realize I'm tense and to relax and to feel that weight drop and to bring that awareness into the whole of me. And that's, for a lot of people, as we age, people can't stand up that straight. There are different things that happen, I mean, I've got some scoliosis and different things, or people with osteoporosis. So the work, I think the work is fundamentally just from the ground up, no pun intended, but that it's interconnected. And that, again, is a shift of looking at these things we think of separately to look at that they're intertwined together. And that's one of the things in looking at the vestibular trail, looking at the control of balance, how it connects into everything, how strongly there are connections into autonomic function, our attention and awareness, memory, emotional state. It's like somebody just left and you moved. It's like, where did Quentin go? So that, so that it's important that that the work isn't just from a physical outside perspective, really just in everything that we do. Even though, and that said, what we do from the outside will affect the inside. So like when kids are sitting in class like this and they're spaced out, you see what's going on, what they're feeling, what's on their mind. And to remind them to sit tall will actually change their awareness and how they're feeling about themselves. So it can work from both directions. But yeah, thanks for the question.
Anybody else? I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about your work in senior centers, in maybe in corporate settings. When I think about the emotional component, I know I do a lot of work with stress, we call it stress management in a business setting, but really, stress is what knocks us off, I think, our balance in our game, right? Our fight, our flight, our freeze, our fawn, our pleasing, all these things are emotional. And we tend to get, lose our balance, I would say.
Right.
And how you work with those things and the difference that it makes. And also, I know a lot of Aikido people, Dojo Cho, are always looking to work with more people, spread this teaching, get beyond the dojo, maybe make some more money, all this kind of stuff. And you've been a leader in doing that. So maybe you could talk about taking this work to other settings and people.
Right. Well, in part because of my own relationship and way of thinking, when I first was introduced to Aikido, everything about it, it was like kind of like meeting an old friend or something I already knew that I learned, so that I thought of it as things that are just true of human experience. And so I think from the beginning in teaching, I was even just teaching in the dojo, looking for everyday, ordinary ways of explaining things in terms of experience that people know and have. And then I really worked on that a lot when I went into business settings, because you got, 45 minutes, 2 hours with somebody, maybe with a group of people, and they didn't decide to come to the dojo and talk about ki. So what does that mean? How does that translate? So that's always been a part of taking it other places, is looking at it really just in our ordinary lives. Well, an example's when I was I studied piano music in college, and we had a professor who could sit with his back to the piano and just somebody say a note and he could just, without looking, hit it. And the idea was like, oh, mind leads body. He's extending ki. Well, the word they used was ideation, IDEA, ideation, that if you have it in mind, it's something that will lead your movement. And so that's why you don't have to look at your hands when you play the piano. So of course, you get me going, Jamie, and I start talking all sorts of things.
Keep going, it's all interesting.
Right, yeah. A lot of it is like, to take it someplace else is to just ask, is to just try to get out there and do it. But I do spend a lot of time in the beginning of something, of making that connection to say, this is something already in your life, that I could sneak up onto anybody, as they're in the kitchen in a moment when they're grounded and centered, and push on them and they'd be stable. I'm really not teaching people something new in terms of their experience, but a different way of seeing it and then being able to take more control of it. So, and once you get out there and it sort of make different connections, it can build. But I've always looked to be able to frame it around what concerns people have and to find the language that's already a part of people's lives.
You're reminding me of like kinesiology testing, your arm or pushing on the body. And just with the difference between, I've worked with things like, I hate war, I love peace, that in a way seem similar or maybe the same thing, but they're entirely different in the body. To say I hate, people just, they don't even know it until you start pushing on them and testing. It's like, there's no stability. I love peace. I love, it could be whatever it is, but the difference between those energies in the body or things that a person individually has a preference for, likes, loves, compared to, oh, I don't like that at all. And you test the body, and there's a big difference in stability.
Right. Yeah, and that's it. That's the emotional connection piece is a really important one when you're looking at balance as we get older, because negative, when we're worried or upset or angry or whatever, we're less stable, and so it's important to recognize that. And I, just anecdotal kinds of things, but I just know a lot of people who've fallen in parking lots, getting in and out of the car, going to doctor's appointments. There's some other crisis going on, and we don't realize that it's impacted our stability because we don't recognize that there is this connection. And that reminds me, one of my favorite quotes is from the downhill skier Peekaboo Street. Some of you may remember the name. She won gold on Nagano or somewhere. And somebody asked her if she was ever afraid when she was skiing, and she said she can't afford to be afraid because it takes your balance back. And so we see that in the Olympics or whatever, when somebody's emotions are all over the place, they have a hard time being stable. So it's an important awareness, again, as we age, and there may be some other factors that are destabilizing, like problems with the joints or some dizziness or muscle loss. And then if there's also a crisis going on, that's when I need to say, oh, this is a moment when I need to center or to feel that weight underside relaxation and make sure I'm focusing as I'm moving. So very
I actually think, we've just been watching the Olympics and watching athletes and, elite, the highest level athletes. I think what we're all watching and fascinated and blown away by is balance, and the difference between the medal, the gold or whatever, and not is, we're pulling for people, don't fall, the figure skater, the skier or whoever it is, these kids doing all these tumbles and stuff. But I always say in golf, as a professional golfer, that the difference that I see, the biggest difference I see between professionals and amateurs is balance. You just don't see professionals, they may miss shots or, things aren't exactly right, but, you never see them like going, falling backwards or, swaying and lifting and all these things that are off balance. That part is there. And I think that's what we watch when we're watching the Olympics, watching professional athletes. And professional movement is this sense of balance is extraordinary.
Right, yeah, and that comes back to the amazing human capacity to stand and walk on 2 feet. And everything that we see, like Simone Biles when she's up there flipping around in the air and then she comes back down vertically, it's based on the very same amazing system each one of us has to walk across the living room. And to just appreciate the wonder and the complexity of that. And then the fact that we can influence that through what we do with our awareness, and it's, that's part of how it works as well. So
Okay. Well, we try to keep these interviews not too long so that people can really watch them. This has been rich, really rich. And I just want to show the book again, Minding Your Balance. Susan Chandler is on Amazon. I know that. If they're, and you're in Denver, easily we can find you. We will post this on YouTube, the recording. And I want to give you a chance if there's anything else you'd like to share, and just thank you so much. You've already shared so much, and you know, it'd be great to continue this conversation. I think that it's so important. And it's so central, so key, right? Balance, a center, balanced ground,
it's so
and
central and key.
it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for letting me ramble on about the all of the background of it. I appreciate that. But it really does come down to in people's lives that the practice of it and realizing what we can do. I have, is trying to find my way in the social media world and all of that. So check me out on Instagram, Minding Your Balance, and YouTube and Patreon. There are more videos, and at some point I hope to do some Zoom classes. But and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. And it's great to have all of you here, both the people from the Aikido community and friends and family and students. So much appreciated. And thank you, Jamie, for putting this together.
Absolutely. Domo arigato gozaimashita. Everybody was that was just awesome. Yeah. Such a wealth of knowledge and passion, and the scientific part, yeah, and the application part, and the real living part, and then all that's completely interconnected, and you embody that and you share that so well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, and I invite people to check this out. You can, we'll get the recording up on YouTube sometime soon, and it'll be very shareable. You can share this with other people in your dojo and in your lives. So thank you all for being here.
Right.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Susan Sensei. Yeah, okay.
Everybody.